I want to take a moment to dedicate this episode to someone very special to both me and today's guest. Brian Lakey, the beloved grandfather of our guest Nora Kate Duell, and a second dad to me, passed away before this episode aired. Brian's life was marked by his deep commitment to the faith, his profound love for his family, and a legacy that will continue to inspire everyone who knew him. As Hebrews 13:7 reminds us, remember those who led you, who spoke the word of God to you, and considering the outcome of their way of life, imitate their faith. We will do just that. Brian, this one's for you. Now let's turn to today's discussion. Have you been attending a church or youth group but feel like you don't quite fit in? Do you ever feel out of place, left out, or disconnected from others in the church? If you or someone you know has ever struggled with any of these feelings in a church, you are not alone. Today on Be the 25, we're talking to a courageous teenager who encountered the feelings of not fitting in. Nora Kate Duell shares her story of how she took matters into her own hands and went from feeling out of place to finding her place in a church community. So stick around and hear what she did to overcome these challenges. Plus, she'll offer advice for anyone who feels left out or who struggles to fit in. It all starts in 3, 2, 1. Welcome to Be the 25 podcast, the place where teens and young adults come to explore how to live the Christian life in a non-Christian world. I'm your host, Dr. Sharon O'Hara. Come join us and get your faith ready for the journey ahead. Well, welcome everyone to another episode of Be the 25. I'm so glad you joined in. Today we have a very important topic that deals with what to do when you feel like you don't fit in your church or your church youth group. You know, feeling connected and valued in a group is crucial to a person's overall sense of well-being. And this is especially true when it comes to your church or church youth group. We all know we're supposed to be in church, and everyone who attends wants to feel like they fit in and belong. But not everyone has that experience, and it's really important to recognize when that isn't happening. And it's equally important to do something about it too. Here are some of the signs to look for. Maybe you find it hard to relate or connect with others in the group. Perhaps there's an unwelcoming or unfriendly atmosphere there, which can make it hard for you to feel at home. Maybe you've encountered cliquish behavior, which will always make a person feel left out. It could be outdated or irrelevant programming, which can make it tough to stay engaged. Or it could be a lack of genuine friendships in the church, which can leave you feeling lonely and isolated, and nobody wants that. These situations can cause us to ask this question: what's wrong with me? And sometimes it's not about what's wrong with you or me, but about finding a place where you truly fit in and feel accepted. And if you're feeling out of place right now in your church or church youth group, it might be a sign that God is closing that chapter and He is guiding you to a different church community where you can truly find your spot and gain a real sense of belonging. It is completely okay to explore new places and see where you might feel more connected. And that's exactly what our special guest did. Nora Kate Duell, otherwise known as NK, spent most of her life in the rolling hills of Tennessee, but recently relocated with her family to the mountains of Virginia. She's a freshman at a top Christian university studying interior design and carpentry. She's a gifted musician, a self-taught guitarist who sings, and she's also a gifted artist and loves to create artwork and crafts for her family and friends. NK absolutely loves being outdoors in God's creation, and she's an avid hiker. She even hikes on the Appalachian Trail. So, Nora Kate, I want to welcome you to the show.
It's good to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Now, NK, like many of our listeners, you grew up in the church and in the church youth group. But during your senior year of high school, your parents packed things up, moved to a new state, which meant they left your church in search for a new one. And they found one to attend, but you felt it wasn't the right fit for you. Can you pinpoint what that reason was? What initially motivated you to look for a different church?
Yeah, absolutely. I was missing, I think, the fellowship aspect of church. The teaching there was great, and it was a very great church. I just had a hard time getting involved in the community. I think a large part of it was that it was such a big church, so I felt anonymous and it was harder to get plugged in. So I tried a couple different groups, and when that didn't work is when I tried a different church.
I think we have to keep in mind that the Lord has a place for us to be, right? We want to be in that place. How did you go about finding the church that you now attend?
I just looked up churches in my area. So I looked online, looked at their web pages, and I just showed up one Sunday to try one out.
Now, some people check online, for example, if they attended a Southern Baptist church or a Catholic church, they'll look for a new one in the area. Did you watch the services online before you even went to that church?
I looked at their About Us page and I looked at their doctrine online so I could get a feel for what they believed and what they were all about. And that gave me an idea to go try it out. That made it easier to find one that I think would line up with my beliefs and that I would fit into.
Good. Okay. Well, I kind of did something similar. We have a little cabin. Actually, you've been to my cabin here in the mountains, you and your parents. And one of the things that I did was I looked at churches online. My husband and I, we started asking people where a good church was, and it always came back to this one particular church in this particular town, and that's where we now attend when we're in the mountains. So checking online, asking around for recommendations, and even cold visiting churches are all ways to find a church. Now, what were the top 3 things you looked for in a church?
This is in no particular order, but I personally looked for a small church. I knew that I felt more comfortable in smaller churches. I think there tends to be a tighter knit community, you feel less anonymous, so it's easier to be plugged in and be welcomed there. Secondly, I looked for the Doctrine and About Us page. I looked to find a church that I thought lined up best with my beliefs. And third, I looked for ways to get involved outside the Sunday morning service. I think it's really hard to get plugged in and have a fellowship if you just go to the Sunday morning service. You might greet people around you, but there's no deep connection there. I think it's important to be involved through serving in the church, or I can be involved through small groups and outside activities.
Right. And for our listening audience, if you didn't catch the last episode, I talked about top 5 things to look for when you go into a new church. Your biblical teaching, whether you're doctrinally aligned with it, the worship style of that church, the sense of community, and service opportunities. I will put that in the show notes for this particular podcast episode. Now, NK, you didn't know about these things because that hasn't aired yet as we're recording, but you've hit a couple of those. What about the worship style of the church? Was that important to you?
I do like when people are very intentional about the songs they're singing, that it's biblically accurate. There's so many different styles of worship, but I do think it's important that the worship leaders are very intentional about the songs they're singing, that it reflects God's truth, that it's not super focused on me, this is how it relates back to me, but that we're really worshiping God.
It's him. And I don't mean HYMN. I'm talking HIM, him.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it's important to really be focusing on the character of God in those songs. So I think that's important, and I do look for that. And I've received confirmation at my current church that they're really intentional about the songs they sing.
All right, very good. Now, let me ask you, what role did prayer and seeking God's guidance play in your decision to find a new church? I'm asking this because sometimes prayer and seeking God's guidance isn't in a person's decision making. And I want to know what role it played in your decision to find a new church.
I think that prayer and seeking God's guidance brought a lot of peace and assurance as I was seeking a new church.
Mm.
It helps when you pray about it before, because when God answers those prayers, you can look back at it and you can say, God was faithful then, God is faithful now. The first couple Sundays I came there, I would sit in my car before service and would pray about it. I don't remember exactly what I said, but it was along the lines of just God give me a discerning spirit, that I would know that this is the right place for me or not. Give me peace, let me feel welcome in this church. Let me not be distracted, so that I could really focus on what I need to be focusing on and know that this is the right church for me or not.
What was it like the first time you visited that church? And how did the people there, did they make you feel welcome? Tell us about that.
Yeah, they made me feel very welcome. When I walked in, somebody guided me to where I was supposed to be. Like I said, it was a much smaller church, so the pastor actually noticed that I was new there and came and introduced himself. A girl about my age, within the first couple of weeks, came up after service and was like, I haven't seen you here before. She introduced me to a lot of the other students there and even to the pastor's wife. And the pastor's wife made a huge impact when I met her. She exchanged phone numbers with me and she said, we should get coffee or lunch sometime. And we have several times since then. Also, what she said was that she would love to have me here. They would all love to have me here. But she understands that if it's not the right place for me, that's okay. That they just want me where God wants me. And that's the most important thing.
And that is the most important thing. You want people in your church that are supposed to be there. I guess there's a possibility that there are people in the church who aren't supposed to be there because they're supposed to be in another faith community. You mentioned something about a girl coming up and making you feel welcome. I have a friend of mine. Her name is Karen Burt Ritchie. We grew up in the same church youth group, and every year shares this story on Facebook, on social media, about our friend Joanne. And this is what she said. In the middle of sixth grade, my family moved from Illinois to New Jersey, and we were trying out a new church at First Baptist Church in Red Bank, New Jersey. I walked into the class, and she looked at me and said, "Come sit next to me. Hi, my name is Joanne." And there began a beautiful friendship, which is still going strong 45 years later. And it was just because one girl reached out to a new person coming in. And I think, NK, this is sometimes lacking in churches. People get just so busy or so concentrated on themselves that they don't really see who's walking in the room and making them feel welcome. How much did that mean to you that these people were so welcoming to you?
It meant so much. Like I said, at the church I was going to before, I felt very anonymous, which I think sometimes can come with a bigger church. It's harder to know who's new and who's been going there for a long time. So
sure,
it meant so much because that's what I had been looking for all these months, what I felt like I had been missing. And so it was just a nice, it was a blessing and a fulfillment to prayer.
Now, was this the only church on your list to visit?
No, I had plans on visiting other churches if I felt like I needed to, but the church was so welcoming and it went so well, I just stayed there. So it worked out great.
It worked out great. First shot and and you're in. Here you are, you're 18 years old, female. You walk into a church all by yourself, which, by the way, you get props for that. Proud of you for doing that. Were there any challenges that you faced during this transition? And if so, how did you overcome them?
One challenge was being overwhelmed by which church to visit. In my area specifically, there's a ton of churches, and you just want to pick the right one. But something my mom said that helped me be less overwhelmed was you can pick one and go there one week and then you can visit another one the next. Like you don't have to get it first shot. You can visit other places.
But you end up getting it for a shot.
Yeah, that was a blessing. Unexpected, but
Now your parents don't go there. How is that? Because all these years, right, you've been going to the same church with your parents. How is that transition of going to a church with your parents to now going to a church on your own?
obviously it's very nice to go to church with my family. They were very supportive through the whole process. They noticed that I wasn't really fitting into the church I was at. And so they even encouraged me. They're like, hey, if you don't feel like you fit in here, you should go look at other places. And it was a big encouragement to hear them say that, to be supportive through that.
Mm. What advice would you give to someone who feels left out or who's really struggling in their current church environment?
I would say make sure you try to get involved first. Go to stuff outside the Sunday morning service. Be intentional about trying to get plugged in. But then if that doesn't work, think about looking for another church to get plugged into. But I would say always try to get involved first.
Before someone leaves their current church, here's a few things to try. Number one, engage in one-on-one conversations with people. Try building deeper relationships by reaching out to individuals within a group, because sometimes personal connections can help bridge that gap and make you feel more included. A second thing is attend small group gatherings. If you just attend church services, it's going to be harder for you to feel like you belong. These smaller, more intimate settings like Bible studies or small groups, they can offer you a more personal experience and might help you connect better with others. Now, I know some of you are in those groups, but you still don't feel connected. And if that is you, do this. Give some feedback. Share your feelings and experiences with church leaders, because your constructive feedback can help them understand what might be missing or how they can make the group more welcoming. And then here's the last suggestion, and that's get involved in new activities. Join new activities or ministries within your current church to meet new people and find where you might fit better. It could be the drama team. It could be children's ministry. If you're into tech, it could be the technology team, missions. There are a load of other opportunities in the church for you to be a part of. So those are my suggestions. Now, Nora Kate, I want to ask you, what did you learn from that experience?
Through that process, I learned that a church can be a great church and it can have great teaching, but it can just not be the right church for you. I think in another stage of life, that church may have been perfect for me, but it's just not what I needed currently.
Is there anything else you would like to share with our listening audience?
Yeah, a couple things. Don't get stuck in the cycle of just visiting churches. It's really important that eventually you find a place to get involved and to receive that fellowship. And lastly, I just want to say that all I have to offer is my own experience. And like so many other things in life, there's no one size fits all solution.
Sure.
You might only have one or two churches in your area, or maybe God wants you to stay at the church you're at for a season, even though you might not understand why. So every situation's a little different. Evaluate it, pray about it, and seek godly counsel.
That's great advice. And I want to thank you so much, Nora Kate, for being a part of today's episode. And I wish you all the best in your freshman year of college.
Thank you so much. And thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Nora Kate's story is a powerful reminder that when we feel like we don't fit in or feel out of place in that church or feel left out, we have to recognize it and then take the initiative to do something about it. Always seek God's guidance first, try other things, or look for a new church to belong to. Remember, it could be a sign that God is closing that chapter and is guiding you to a different church community where you can truly find your spot and gain a real sense of belonging. Well, that's a wrap for today, guys and gals. Did you find this episode helpful? then take a moment to share it, rate it, and write a review. Don't forget to visit BeThe25.com. Plenty of resources there to help you on your faith journey. We got some exciting episodes just ahead, so hit that subscribe button so you won't miss a thing. Have an awesome week, and remember, keep growing, keep going.